welcome back to another episode here on the From the Farmyard podcast. Today, we are once again adding a new video to this series, which we are titling Our Farmyard Friends. If you joined us before, then you know the deal. We are bringing on a few of the people we know or have met, people we call mentors, but most importantly, we call them our friends, and we hope you will too. But enough from me. Let's get into this episode and let our special guest introduce herself.
Hello, I am Regina Fleer. I live in Northeast Nebraska, and kind of to give you my backstory of how I became a farmer. I grew up in farming, actually. I'm a fifth generation hog farmer, so I've got a long history with farming and all different stuff like that. And I just really have always loved farming. I mean, when you're born into it, you're kind of forced to, participate, kind of help on the farm. And when I was young, I didn't really like having to help with chores and doing stuff like that. But as I grew up, I learned to really love farming and everything that had to do with it. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't always fun. But I look back now and I'm so thankful that I was raised in a farming community, in a farming family, and
Mm-hmm.
it was awesome. I mean, I think about other kids who didn't have that, and I'm so blessed because of it.
Seriously.
Um, Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I totally understand that. I mean, obviously for us, you would kind of call us first generation, me and Zach, if you want to look at it that way. We weren't raised with that background of like farming. It wasn't till like, I mean, I think I've been doing gardening for 8 years now. My family has. And, at first I was like, I don't want to pull the weeds. I don't want to take care of the chickens. But now that I'm at the age that I am, and I realize like this is like very important stuff, like very important knowledge, and it's a resource, and it's super cool, and like you said, very blessed to be able to grow up as a kid, be able to have that knowledge now, because I see a lot of people making that step, and moving from like their big city corporate jobs, whatever, and just going into their backyard and starting, and they don't really know what to do, but they know they want it. For us, we just like kind of grew up with it, and it's amazing. It's super cool. So I totally get that.
Yeah. Um, I mean, when it's all it's awesome. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine not being raised in a farming family because it shapes your whole life. It makes you appreciate so many things that, some people can take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I always remembered like growing up, kids would always want to hang out with me, and I'd be like, I can't. Like, I actually have stuff to do. They're like, why? I'm like, because like I can't just like stop doing what I'm doing and like go hang out with you right now. I have to go like help my dad scoop something, which is no fun. So yeah, but now it's totally different because I grew up on a hog farm, but I married a beef farmer. So I have to relearn all these things that I thought I always knew. And so I'm like, wait, what is this? Like, why are you using silage? Because we don't use silage for hogs, but
Mm-hmm.
I still help out on my parents' hog farm and I go over there a couple times a week, but it's just a whole new spectrum, that I feel like you always can learn new things with farming. It's always evolving, always
Yeah.
changing. I think that's so cool that it's not always, I think people think of it as being, oh, you're out there with your horse and, your plow and stuff like that, but that's really not what farming is. It's so cool that it changes and it can
Mm-hmm.
change with you. So awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
And how long has your family had their property?
Um, well, my parents inherited the farm, so it's probably been over maybe 200 years, just
Holy
shy of
moly.
200 years. So, yes. And my husband's family have owned their farm for about 150. So, we go back way
Wow.
back to farming. So,
That's so
and
cool.
it's a privilege for us that we get to have the farm, but I know there's a lot of people that are just starting out and how discouraging it can be when you don't have, the land, you don't have the things that a lot of these many generation farmers have, but it's don't be discouraged about that because you start out small and you grow from there.
Hmm.
So
It's all a learning
we go way back.
experience. It's all a learning
Yes, yeah, for
experience. Like
sure.
everything, your wins and your losses, there's so many things you can learn from this lifestyle, and it's not going to be easy at first. I mean, we've been doing it for, 8 years now, okay? And we still mess things up. We still haven't learned everything. And I think that's also the coolest part about it because you're never done learning. Like there's always something new to learn. Like if you're an expert on one topic, yeah, maybe, but there's so many aspects when it comes to agriculture and farming, and there's like just so many different paths you can take. Like if you want to be a poultry farmer, maybe you got that down. Maybe you want to go into raising cattle and raising pigs and stuff. There's like so many different paths you can choose from. It's all
Oh, for
just
sure.
a crazy experience. It's so cool.
For sure. And I also think it's fun that you could be set in your way with like, oh, I'm a hog farmer. But you can also broaden it and be like, hey, let's get some chickens. Like, see what
Hmm.
this is about. And that's so fun because you get to learn so much more and so many new things. And you're
Hmm.
like, wait, what do I do with all these eggs now? Like, how can I, preserve them? How can I give them away? What can I do to get an income off of it? Like, it's so fun just to I don't know, grow with farming. There's so
Yeah.
many things.
You're
And I mean,
literally,
I have a,
ultimately, you're growing.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
growing your
for
food.
sure.
You're growing your animals. You're growing your knowledge. It's all growth and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yo, oh yes. Yeah, you can't farm and not grow. I
Hmm.
mean, you might have a poor year, you might, lose some livestock or different stuff like that, but you ultimately grow through it all. You learn through all those experiences. And like I just got a goose and I have never had a goose before. And gooses kind of or geese, I should say, terrify me, but she's actually very sweet. And so I'm learning from that and I'm doing some research. I'm like, how do I even care for a goose? I mean, it's a whole new ball game. And she's laying eggs, which I'm like, what? I didn't realize that geese lay eggs consistently, but I'll go into the hen house and I'll find a goose egg. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? But it's fun. I've been learning how to bake with it. Like, that's awesome. And I got
Yeah.
chickens. And then my husband's family has horses. And so I grew up with horses, but they use it like intensely. Like they go through and check the cattle twice a day on horseback. Like
Huh.
it's crazy. And I'm like,
That's
whoa,
cool.
this is fun. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But I do garden on this. That's like my main thing that I do is garden. And then I love the livestock aspect of farming too, but I really love the gardening. And I
Yeah.
mean, I don't have like a crazy amount of veggies that I produce, but I have them all in raised beds because I live on a hill. And so it has to be kind of terraced. Otherwise, everything will
Hmm.
erode. So I make enough for my family, enough to give away, and enough food and veggies to where if I wanted to, I can sell them at the farmers market that we have in our town.
Yeah.
But I just enjoy gardening so much and I feel like it's just so therapeutic. I don't
Oh
know.
my,
I
oh
love
my
I
gosh,
love
yes.
going out.
Oh my
I
gosh,
love going
yes.
out with the, I got my garden baskets and I'm just going out there and I get so excited. Like I know I could go to the store and buy these potatoes for like $3, but I'm going to spend $25 to grow these potatoes because it's so satisfying to know what I'm putting in my garden. I know what's going in it. I know what I'm fertilizing with. I know what I'm growing with. I know what everything that has been on and put into my potatoes. And it gets
Yeah.
me so excited when I whip them up and I'm like, whoo, put some gravy on it. I get so excited.
Yeah. Totally agree
But
with
yeah,
that. That's
yep.
that's
And
the
then,
that's one of the reasons we started like growing our own food and raising stuff in the backyard because we wanted to become more self-sufficient than what we were. Because like grand
mhm,
scheme of things, I mean, I think people definitely in the past, few years, we've really seen a jump in agriculture and people taking a grasp on homesteading and wanting to grow in their backyards or off of
oh,
their
for sure.
back porches or whatever they have. They're like, okay, stuff has increased in price. I mean, I'm not saying
Hmm.
gardening and growing your own food, livestock is cheap. It's not, but it's the
Oh,
thought
yeah.
process of seeing what you're putting into it. Because when you go to Walmart and you're buying vegetables, what have they put on them? Where did they grow? Where did they come from? What's been sprayed on
Mm-hmm.
them? I like that concept of having, my vegetables come from my garden and I know what I've done to them because I grew them and I watched them start from a seed to a plant to harvesting. I know what I've put into it and I know what I've not put into it. Whereas when you go to the stores, it's like it's you just you don't know. You don't know.
Right.
It's
Right.
really nice to have that availability, especially with with meat and stuff. Meat's huge with that because so much stuff is put into meat and it's like just being able to raise it the way we prefer to our
Mm-hmm.
preference and raising so much of it, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the
Yeah.
meat, we heard something which we've been getting ours from a local farm for past year and a half or
Mm-hmm.
longer, and it's just made everybody in our family sick repeatedly. And then my mom was talking to somebody however long ago, and he said, right when we get the meat into the store, we have to inject it with a dye or something to keep the color.
Hmm.
And like, what?
Oh
You're
my
injecting it
goodness.
right when it comes in. And the guy was like, I don't even know what it is. They just tell us we have to do it or it can't go out on the shelves.
Oh
That's
wow.
not good. So
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
good to leap towards doing your own things or supporting local farmers like you guys and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. And it's cool when I can go down to the freezer and be like, "Hey, I want steak for supper," and I don't have to go to the store and be like, "Whoo,
It's
buy
your
that
own
steak. It's
grocery store.
expensive."
Right.
It's your own
Yeah,
grocery
yeah.
store.
And sometimes that can be hard too, though. Like, even though you have a whole stocked freezer, you can go down and be like, what do I make with this now? I know I have it, but like, what are you supposed to cook with this when you
Mm-hmm.
get tired of hamburgers, you get tired of stuff like that?
Yeah.
But it's fun to like broaden your horizons on that because I have a whole stocked freezer of pork and beef. So I have the best of both worlds. Got my bacon and
Yeah.
got my steak. So,
Amazing.
oh
So what
yeah.
So, yeah,
touched
go ahead.
briefly on what animals that you guys had, but what all do you raise or what all have you been around and stuff like that?
Oh goodness. So my parents, like I said, they have a hog farm and they have like 700 to 800 hogs. And
Oh, oh my
yeah, they have a
gosh.
lot. But they're out on dirt lots, so they're outside, they're running around. Um and I've loved hogs. I know people ask me what my favorite animal is and I'll always be like pigs. They're so smart. They can untie gates and then they'll retie them. Like I don't know how they do it, but they're super smart. And I love when they're farrowing. I love taking care of um, the litters and stuff like that. I love that. And then my parents also had cattle, but I wasn't super involved in that. Like we usually had just put them out on pasture just because we had the pasture and we needed to use up that pasture, not let it go to waste. And so I grew up with cattle, but then my mom also had like 200 chickens. And I always despised chickens
You
because
guys go
of
big with
caring
the
for
you
them.
guys go big with the animal amounts. Holy moly.
Yeah, I know. It started out small though, and that's so encouraging is that like my parents when they started out, they didn't really have that many hogs. Like I go back 5 generations, but that first generation did not have 700 hogs. They started
Yeah.
out with like 10, if that, and then they just kept growing from there. And we didn't stay in the same location like my, great, however far back that goes, fifth generation back. He just started out on a one home place and he had maybe 10, 15. And from there, my next person took over and he had maybe 10 or 15. It wasn't really till my grandfather and my father that the hog operation kind of exploded. My dad, especially. I mean, he quadrupled the hog operation. And then my mom, she started out with, I think it was like 100 chickens from my grandma. And then she just kind of exploded it from there. And she doesn't even like chickens, but she just enjoys caring for them, which is weird. She doesn't like the animal, but she likes what comes from them and she likes taking care of them, which I find weird. But so I think it's cool that you can start out small and there's hope that you're going to grow. It's not right away. It's not it could be in 5 years, but for most likely it's going to take longer than that to grow your operation or to get to where my parents are. Um, but then I grew up with that and then my parents had some horses and we didn't really use them, but they were there just for joyriding, looking around at them. But then when I got married, I married a beef farmer. So that was a whole new ball game, whole spectrum. I mean, my in-laws and my husband, they have like 25 head of cattle, 2,500 head of cattle, which is a lot.
Yeah,
And
that is a lot.
so me coming from 30 head of cattle to 2,500, I'm like, oh man, calving season is a real thing. Like I didn't really even think about it because there's difference between calving season for my family, which has 30 head, and them 25 head, but they calve out 200 cows each year. So 200 new calves and stuff like that. But they have to go during calving season, which is February, March, and a little bit of April, May, and they check at night. So they're going out 2 or 3 times a night to check, make sure that the cows are doing all right. They're making sure that their calving process is going well. And I just didn't know that. I just was oblivious. I thought that cows and cattle was way easier than swine because, you just shove them out in a field, they're out running, you give them some
Mm-hmm.
hay, and then they have their calves. No, they check on them. And I'm just like, whew, not accustomed to that. So yeah, there's that. And then I had gotten ducks, and that was a whole new ball game as well. So I love with farming that you can learn new things, you can try new things. So yeah, I had ducks and I loved them, but something got them, which is super sad. But hopefully this year we'll protect the coop better. So yeah, a lot of animals that I've grown up with and a lot of evolving and learning new things, but I loved it and I still love it. But yeah.
So
And
I think it's like that where you can like some animals wouldn't fit on certain properties or you just can't just they just don't work well with your family and things like
mhm.
that. So it's nice to be like, okay, we got to get rid of this or harvest the duck like ducks for example. I know you didn't do that, but harvest the ducks or harvest all these chickens and repurpose the area, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that is cool that if you don't succeed in one thing, it's okay to try new things. It's okay to do something different, um, and that's all right. It's you don't always have to do the same old. So,
mhm.
yeah.
So explain to us a bit. You are more involved in, like, let's just say you've raised pigs for however long, right? Explain to us the process of like what does it take to like raise pigs?
Oh
From
goodness.
piglet to farrowing and or harvesting or whatever, the whole process.
Yeah.
Know it all.
So my parents farrow, so they have their sows and everything. They have their live young. They farrow, and then they go all the way up and finish them out, so they get them fat, and then they go
Mhm.
off to market.
Mhm.
And then it's a whole process. Like you have to have certain buildings for this, in certain places, and certain feeding and certain waters. Like you don't just go out and give them whatever your kitchen scraps were. Like that's not how it works. And I feel like that's what a lot of people think.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to have a whole ration for them and certain foods and different stuff like that. But they're a lot of work. And I mean, a sow can have upwards to 10, 8 to 10 pigs, and they'll farrow every. So we'll have a session of sows that will come in every 6 weeks. We'll have another group of sows. So like 16 sows will farrow. And then another 6 weeks, another group of 16. So it's just a continual shifting and moving. So they'll come in, they'll farrow, they'll have their litter. And then from there, they move up and they get weaned at 6 weeks and they go into a separate building where then they're get nice and big. And then from there, they go to another building, which is a hoop house, and they're so excited they're running around crazy in there, and then they go to the market. My parents also sell like breeding stock, so they're not just a one thing. They don't just do it for market, but they also sell like old line sows and boars and stuff like that, which is super cool. And they deliver. So a lot of people who they sell and deliver to is the Amish, since they are able
Mm-hmm.
to, pick up their own swine and stuff like that. My parents will drive down to Missouri a couple times a month with these big loads of hogs, and they'll sell them to the Amish people who are just starting up or stuff like that. So it's super cool that it's not just my parents that have our line of hogs, it's across the United States. Like they've sold to, I don't know, 20 different states, and they traveled all over the place delivering
Incredible.
and doing stuff like that. And that's super cool. And it's so fun to see like new farmers coming in. I mean, they don't know anything about farming or hog farming, and they'll call my dad, and my dad will just sit on the phone with them for like 2 hours talking about this is what you need, this is what you got to do. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole process, and I love the farrowing. That's like one of my favorites. Is like the new fresh babies, and they're so cute. Um, but yeah, it's super cool just to see the whole process and how it has expanded. But yeah.
So
Kind of
we
hogs you
are,
guys.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Because we ourselves, like, I know you guys are raising more probably larger varieties of pigs and stuff. But like, what would you recommend? What do you raise? And then what would you recommend to like a beginner who is interested in raising their own pigs for meat?
Oh boy. Um, I would probably recommend like a spot, which it sounds weird, but that's a variety, not a variety, but it's a breed that's very docile, but also is a very good mother when it comes to their young. Some breeds are kind of hostile towards their young, and you have to watch them a lot when they're farrowing. But the spot breed is very docile, very you can go in the pen when they're farrowing. They're not going to be upset with you. That's something I would recommend is going for a spot breed. If you're looking for fast growth, like if you're ready, there's breeds that will grow faster and quicker than some other ones. So if you're looking for, a quick turnaround for a butcher, it'd be like a Duroc spot cross. So Durocs are that red, really pretty auburn colored swine, and then you got your spots. They're literally white with black spots. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
weird, but yeah, that's what they are. And you cross those two, and you get this awesome, quick growing swine with great quality meats. Um, yeah, that's one I would really recommend for someone that's beginning out. You don't some of your whiter colored, your lighter colored can be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more squealy, kind of more annoying in their
Mm-hmm.
whenever they're hungry and stuff like that. But those spots, and they're just top of the line for, docility and stuff like that. And that's what my parents that's what they really focus in on is the spots. And a lot of people really like them for how docile they are and how easy they are to work with and how good they are at producing and mothering. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I would look into if you're looking into getting spots or hogs. It would be the spots. But yeah, and if you're starting out with hogs, they don't have to have something super special. They don't have to have the world's greatest building. As long as you give them a shelter that they can go away from, the elements somewhat, some of a windbreak, and something over their head. You throw them a bale of hay. And the cool thing about pigs is that they nest. They create these big, huge holes in the ground. You give them some hay, you're not going to be able to find them if they're cold. They'll bury themselves in there. They'll stay nice and warm. You have to have some food for them, some sort of corn with some good proteins in it. Um, and if you need help with like a ration or something like that, you can always go to like your nutrition in the area for livestock. Ours is Progressive Nutrition, something like that. And they will help you find a ration for what you're trying to feed out. And the nice thing about that is that you can go there and be like, this is what I'm looking for. And they'll help you and they'll be like, hey, you want to put this and this and this and this. And it's nothing that's going to be, you know, weird or any chemicals or stuff like that in it, but they'll help you, and that's super cool. You just need a pan of water, and there you go. Is Pigs are so easy to take care of, um, and work with, but yeah, just have a pen for them, and there you
Mm-hmm.
go. Happy swine, happy life.
So like for beginners, okay? Like my dad, he wants to my parents, okay? They
Mm-hmm.
want to try something else. We've done chickens and we've done meat birds for a long time. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
been 8, 9 years we've done meat birds and raised our own hens for eggs and stuff. We have
Mm-hmm.
that pretty much down to a T, obviously, always learning. We could always expand, we could always do better at what we do, but we have the whole concept down. But for like beginners, how many, okay, like can you get one pig and just keep it by itself, or do you need two pigs? Do you need three pigs? Can two male pigs be together? Should it be a female pig? What's better for like sizes and stuff? Like these are the questions that I know like my dad would want asked. So for my
Hmm.
dad's sake, because he's probably gonna watch this, like I'm asking these questions for you, Pop. So like those
No.
are just like questions I think of. Also with like
Hmm.
fencing, like I know people say like because they're smaller, like they have like only like certain size fencing, not too high off the ground. Like
Hmm.
electric fencing, is that the way to go? I don't know. I've never done pigs, but my family is definitely interested in it.
Hmm. Yeah, so if you're looking for, oh, like if you're gonna farrow outside, so they're not in a building, they're just kind of on a dirt lot. Um, think how small pigs are. Pigs when they're born, they're like not even they're like a pound, 2 pounds, somewhere in there. They're not really big. So as they grow, they're going to be very squirrely. They can get out anywhere. So for fencing and stuff like that, there's fencing that's called hog paneling. And the reason why it's called hog paneling, it's for hogs. On the bottom, they'll have a gap that's about 2 inches. And then it'll be 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, and then it'll get bigger from there up. You want to have something like that. But also be in mind that pigs dig.
Hmm.
They dig very easily. So you want to keep in mind when you're out, when you're farrowing or you're doing stuff like that, or even if you have one butcher or that you're planning to butcher, you got one of those out, they're gonna dig. So you have to keep track of that, filling in their holes back in. Um, yeah, so fencing and stuff like that. You can go electric fencing too. Like my parents have that as an option. But I wouldn't recommend it if you're gonna have uh like smaller pigs because
Hmm.
they can still get out. They're pretty squirrely. Um, so yeah, and one butcher, like a carcass weight and stuff like that, it will come up to like 100 pounds or so of meat that you'll get. So if you think about that, my parents, there's only two of them currently at their home, and they will butcher one about every 3 months or so, and that's enough to feed their family and my family and a couple of my other
Right.
siblings too. So if that kind of helps with how much you'll get out of your butchers and stuff like that, if you don't want to have too many hogs. Like if there's just two of
Hmm.
you don't want to have like 15 and then go and butcher them because then how are you supposed to store that? You have to think
Hmm.
about freezer space. You have to think
Right.
about, when you go into butchering them, if you're having someone butchering them or if you're butchering them yourself, how that all is going to work out, timeline and stuff like that. And so yeah, and if you want to breed, your hogs, you need to be able to have them separate at when they go to farrow. You don't want your boar and your sow that's going to farrow together because the boar will be aggressive and he will intentionally hurt your piglets and stuff like that. So you want to keep them separated. So that's something else that you'll need to think about is that if you have those two, you'll need to have a separate location for them once your sow is bred and stuff like that. So separate holding for your boar, separate holding for your sow. And I would even recommend if you have the space for it, having three separate ones, one to farrow, a breeding pen, and then your boar pen. So you can combine them together when you're ready for, your sow to be bred and then separate them. And that way you can always keep them together. So that's a lot of pens, but they don't need a huge amount of space. Like to farrow in, I would recommend something like a 15 by 20 or a 10 by 10 space to farrow in. And yeah, for butchers, they would like a larger space, kind of to run around more. So like a 20 by 20, but they can still lay and stuff like that. But
Right.
hopefully that answer
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
questions.
Like when I say like two, I'm saying for like companionship. Are they like I can't have
Um,
like one chicken by itself because it'll or whatever. Like do I can one specifically live on its own or do I
oh
need
yeah,
a second one? Are they like that? They're
they're
just kind of they can be by
they're like a
themselves.
dog. I don't
Yeah.
know if that makes sense. They can be very companionship kind of thing, but they don't need another one
Hmm.
to like for help with their mental.
Okay.
Like a chicken, I understand, or a duck. They
Yeah.
need other people, otherwise they're not going to do well or produce well. But a pig, they don't. They just
Right.
enjoy the simplicity of life,
Yeah.
really. And they, so, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
One other thing to think about is I know a lot of people say you sweat like a pig, like that's a saying, but pigs actually do not sweat. So in the summertime, if you live in a location or a climate that's super hot, you have to give them something for them to cool off in because they don't sweat. So whether that be you fill up some water for them to play in or a mud, which pigs in the mud, stuff
Do
like
they
that.
actually like mud? They actually like mud then? Like that's a real thing?
They would okay, if you had a giant mud hole or a clean watering hole, they're gonna go to the clean one. Mud is their last resort. So they play in the water. They love water. Like they're really funny in the water. They'll
Huh.
run around, they blow bubbles in the water, like they love it. Um, but yeah, so they don't necessarily love mud, but that's how they cool off. That's also
Hmm.
like their sunscreen. So if you have a lighter colored hog, they burn. Okay. They're like pink at the end of the day because they'll sit in the mud. So you'll have like random spots on them that are like pink and then white. So that's also like their sunscreen, mud is, and cooling off and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind that if it's super hot, you might have to set like a sprinkler out for them to cool off in. That's something you can do. Um, but pigs are also very ornery, so they do get bored.
Hmm.
So like what my dad does, he'll sometimes put bowling balls in their pen with them and they'll play with that. He'll put sticks in there for them to play with because otherwise, a pig that is bored will get in trouble. He will untie gates, he will bust things up. Yeah. So that's something to think about if you're first going into it. But all that is to say, pigs are very simple, very easy to take care of. It's just a learning experience, as everything is.
You mentioned earlier that you garden. So what all do you grow and what scale are you on? Stuff
Oh,
like that.
goodness. So I have raised beds that I grow my veggies in and stuff like that because I live on a hill. Um, and I'm not at a scale where I'm like purposely growing to sell. But if I have extras, which normally I do because I always plant way more than I need to,
Oh,
I either
same.
it's
Same. It's a
a
problem.
it is, yeah. And it's like, oh, I should know that I only need two cherry tomato plants. But
Well, you
last
Oh,
get
year I planted
the
nine.
cherry tomatoes are the worst. Oh my gosh. Okay, my whole family. Okay, my whole family. This is what I was gonna bring up. My whole family can tell you this. I plant way too many cherry tomatoes. Dude, you only need two. I plant 15. I'm like,
Oh dear.
why did I do that many? That was dumb.
It's the worst. Having to pick that many cherry tomatoes is honestly, oh, it really it makes me go insane.
No, no, no.
Um,
It's terrible.
but it is, yeah. But like I said, I really don't grow to, sell and stuff like that. But if I do have extra that I like if I've canned like 300 cans of tomatoes, like I really don't really want to can any more than that. And I've frozen tomatoes and stuff like that. I will either give away to family or friends, and then there has a local farmers market that's all year round that I can take my produce to and be like, "Hey, you want this?" And a lot of people will come in and buy it, which is awesome. So sometimes I will plant extra because of that, but I don't necessarily purposely try to, if that makes sense. If I have extra plants, I'll be like, just pop it in and I can always give away or sell that extra. Um, I mean, I have specific things that I plant. So I do like spring crops. I start, as soon as the ground can be worked, I pop them out. So like peas and carrots and, your beets, cabbage, all stuff like that, your cool season stuff. And then summertime hits and I'm planting out, my tomatoes, all stuff like that. Then once I clear out a bed of something, so say my cabbage is done for springtime, I'm planting my potatoes in it. If that kind of makes sense. Like I always want to have my garden beds filled. I don't want to just have an empty space in my garden that's utilizing nothing. Like the reason why I have my garden beds is so that I can grow something. So
Right.
as soon as I take something out, I'm planting something in. Something I'm always looking for is if I'm taking something out and it's the season, say I'm done with my tomatoes, like, oh, I'm ready just to pull them out. I look for something that's short, like a short season crop. Since I'm in a zone 5A, I'm looking for something like that's going to be able to be produced and ready before that first fall frost hits. Um, and that way I can always, pull them out and stuff like that. But I'll cover my plants too. If I know it's going to be a hard frost, I'll cover them with like harvest guard, and that extends my season a little bit. But yeah, I don't go crazy, but I do have like a lots of flowers that I grow because I love flowers, and
They're
I think
so
that's something
magical.
you need. Yes, they are magical, and they're very, I don't know, a respite or stuff like that. The place for me to relax, but I think it's
Hmm.
good too if you shouldn't. I shouldn't say you shouldn't, but even if you hate flowers, I still think you should grow some either
Hmm.
somewhere around your garden space for those pollinators. Like that's huge. Like I've if you don't have stuff like that close to where your garden is, you can have a lot of, like with your zucchinis and stuff like that. If you've ever noticed where you're growing your zucchinis and they just grow for a little bit and then they start to like deteriorate at the base, it's because they're not fertilized properly. So if you've got some calendula, you've got something planted in your garden beds around there that bees, that other pollinators are going to come through and pollinate it, that's ideal.
Hmm.
You can plant zinnias in there, something, it doesn't have to be something hard, pop some
Right.
seeds in it, but making sure to keep your vegetables and putting in some flowers in there is really ideal for pollinating and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. There's
That's kind of what I
two.
did this year. We have like our main gardens, but then like I tried nasturtium throughout, okay? And that was
Hmm.
really cool. Those are beautiful plants. Like
Yeah,
those are
yeah,
cool.
they are.
But I have one big flower garden, and basically it's like between like my orchard and our garden. So it's like a rest
Hmm.
stop for like all the pollinators, and then they can go out from that. And it's like,
Oh yeah.
because like our property has like we have the fruit trees, we have the vegetable garden, and then we have the flowers that all of these pollinators can come and just,
Hmm.
chill out. But there's like a lot of like really good flowers for that with pollinating, like zinnias are awesome. Those are like
Hmm.
great flowers. Zinnias and
Yeah.
nasturtium, honestly, if you just want zinnias, they don't really, you could plant them somewhere. They don't take up much space. They just go up. Nasturtium,
Yeah.
now they go out. So like if you want to
Yeah.
plant throughout your garden, I would suggest zinnias honestly because they just go up, they don't take a lot of space, and they're
Yeah.
super pretty pops of colors right there in your garden.
Hmm. No, I planted nasturtium in my beds too, and a lot of times when I use nasturtiums, I use it as a ground cover to like suppress weeds.
Yeah.
Um,
That totally
and that
worked for
seems,
me this year. I didn't do that on
yeah,
purpose, but they went everywhere.
I will do it if I have like some taller stuff like my uh, uh, peppers and stuff like that. I'll put it at the base of it because they still get sunlight, but then they're suppressing those weeds. But
Hmm.
in all honesty, I don't have a crazy amount of weeds in my raised beds. Like that's the one nice thing about raised beds. But like when I was growing up, my mom and my grandma had this huge garden. And I hated pulling weeds. There just seemed to be so many weeds in their garden and I was just like, oh, but they also produce so much, but I just hate pulling weeds. So it's nice that I have my raised beds. I don't have to worry about it. And I just sometimes they'll sink, the soil will sink down, and instead of putting like topsoil or different stuff like that inside of them, I usually will just get some compost, shove that on top, and my plants love it. So
Hmm.
that's nice. All the
There's
things.
been an argument, not really an argument, a debate here on the channel with do people like to eat fresh tomatoes?
And that's
Oh,
not
I
okay.
love
Where
them.
where do you fall? I like asking people this, but where do you fall on that spectrum?
Some people think I'm weird, but I could literally take a tomato, like a big fresh. It has to be from the garden, like store-bought ones. They
Store
never
bought
compare.
store bought vegetables are poo poo compared to stuff. Once you grow something in your garden, there's no going back. Like I
Yeah,
cannot eat a store bought. Okay, I'm a gardener, not the biggest fan of vegetables, but I can tell the difference between my garden vegetables and my store bought vegetables. Okay, I do not like the store bought cucumbers and the carrots and stuff. They just taste so bitter and
Yeah.
gross.
flavorless.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
but you eat a cucumber right from your garden, it is so just like juicy and it's just,
Yeah.
oh, garden
There's
food's
a there
better.
is a definite difference for sure. But yeah, tomatoes, I like love tomatoes. Like I could go out, like pick one straight off the vine and eat it like an apple. Like
Me
I
too.
love it.
Yep.
Love it. It's controversial. It really is because my husband actually hates all fruits and all vegetables. So
Interesting.
it's just me and him right now. I mean, we have a baby, but he doesn't eat that much. So when I grow things, I'm like, I grow it for myself, not because my husband doesn't like it, which is hard.
I
But
I'm like
I
with tomatoes. I will eat the bigger slicers just like an apple, or I will sit out there. I plant way too many cherry tomatoes, but I kind of do it on purpose because I know
mm-hmm.
I'm going to enjoy it so much just sitting out there and fresh eating. Like I'll eat those for dinner multiple
oh,
nights in a row. They're not
oh yeah,
shouldn't do it, but I do.
that's
And
the
I
best.
will just put away tomatoes. And I'm just like, this is the life. Like right now, I wish that I could go out there and just pick some tomatoes and they'd be okay, but there's no tomatoes.
Yeah,
It is very
it's
sad.
honestly the best. Like I will go out there when I've got those cherry tomatoes in the summer and literally sit out there and that's my breakfast. Like it's the best. Like cherry tomatoes, whew, they're so good.
They are which variety of cherry tomatoes or tomatoes in general do you prefer growing?
Oh goodness. I love for cherry tomatoes, one of my favorites is sun sugar. So it's that yellow tomato, little cherry tomato. I love that one. Um, super sweet 100s. That's what it's called. But I love growing those about. Those are little cherry tomatoes. Those are smaller cherry, so they're not
Mhm.
really a cherry. They're like a pea between a pea and an almond size. Like they're small, but I like how small they are. They're really easy to, I don't know, eat. I like them. But like for heirloom varieties and stuff like that, like I really like Goliath varieties. Those are super good. I'm blanking on one of the ones that I really like, but Celebrity. Celebrity is like one of my favorites for like a nice tomato that's not like ginormous, like bigger than your face, but like a nice
Yeah,
slicer, but that's not like huge. I like
yeah,
that. It just has a very, it's just very good. Like I like that the inside of it, this is probably weird, but it's not like all seed, which that's always good for some stuff, but it has a lot of like meat to it. And
yeah.
that's nice.
I get what you mean with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
For
did the yellow
context,
pear tomatoes this past year, and those were really they taste there was just so much flesh to it. Like it was good, but I was like there wasn't a lot of flavor that I would get from something else, I'd say.
Mhm.
But I'd still
Yeah.
grow them again because they were good.
Yeah. I like sometimes I'm nervous to try like new varieties and stuff like that. I should branch out more, but I'm like kind of stuck in my ways. I'm like, I know this is good. I know I've had it
hmm
before and I know it's going to produce for me. Where I've tried
Right.
things in years past and then I get
right.
like absolutely no harvest of a certain something, whether it's like my peas or something like that. And I'm like, I miss that then. I'm like, so then I get nervous to try to try new
Yeah.
things.
I do
It's
that with
hard.
my I do the better boy
Yeah,
slicers.
better boys. Ooh, those are
I
good.
just can't get those to grow very well. And I
Yeah.
hate it because I want them because I like the big slicing tomatoes
Yeah.
and I just can't get them to grow. So last year was very bad. I think I got like three maybe, but I was
Hmm.
enjoying all the cherry tomatoes, so it was fine.
Yeah.
But it was very disappointing. Like I would never not grow them, whether they don't produce or they produce a whole bunch. I'm still
Hmm.
gonna have to stay dedicated to them because
Yeah.
they look cool and they taste way better when they grow. So
Yeah. We always have something like in our gardens. We're always going to have like our staples, our go-tos in our garden. And then sometimes I will like leave a spot for like, if I feel like being risky and throwing out this pineapple tomato, which those are actually good, and
I
trying something
tried
new.
those. Those they didn't work for me. I can't okay, I can't get the big steak tomatoes. They always split and they crack and then they die. I can't ever get them. They don't work for me.
When your tomatoes split like that though, that's inconsistent water. So like you're either doing like a lot of water and then like no water or like a little
It's
water and
so
then a lot of water.
it's so dependent on rain here. It's like
Oh,
Pennsylvania is so fickle with Mother Nature. It's
yeah.
like it doesn't rain and then it cores like all at once.
Hmm.
I've given up on the big steak tomatoes. I do the paste
Oh,
ones and I do the cherries. I
yeah.
don't
That would
like
be so hard.
tomatoes, by the way. I would like to give context on this, why this is a huge debate and why I'm not pipping into this conversation. I don't like raw tomatoes. I will eat tomatoes any other way. I can't. It's the texture thing. When it's
Hmm.
raw in my mouth and it pops and the seeds just jerk back in my throat and it's all weird and I just no. No, it's not good. It's not good. That's why it's a debate here, and I know Zach likes to join more in his army of tomato lovers. I'm over here. He says hashtag Mater hater for me, and you know what? Whatever. I just can't stand them
No,
raw.
that's fine.
No,
I
yeah.
saw you were I commented on something that you had posted on Instagram, and it was freezing bags of tomatoes for
Yeah.
canning. Could you do them? Are they good for fresh eating after you freeze them like that,
Not
or you wouldn't
usually.
really?
They kind of get a little bit not mushy, but kind of they're not as like firm. And I like my tomatoes firm, like where they're
Yeah.
not like squishy. So
Mhm.
I tried to do it before because I'm like, oh, I can save these for later, but it's not the same and it doesn't taste anywhere good. So that's why usually when I freeze those, I will just can them or sometimes I'm too lazy to can them and I will like puree them and make them into like spaghetti sauce and stuff like that. And that's kind of like when I have so many cherry tomatoes, that's what I do is I make them into sauces, tomato paste, all the stuff.
We do
Like it's simple
salsa.
things.
We do
Yeah.
salsa. We tried sauce, but we mainly do salsa.
Yeah. Salsa is super good, but so I wish I would do it more, but I'd be the only one eating it. So sometimes it's hard with stuff like
Yeah.
that because I'm the only one in my household that eats fruits and vegetables. So, but I can give away, but
So what would you say out of
prefer.
all the things that you have grown would be your number one favorite that you will just like continue to grow like over and over and over again? Like no,
Oh
just
goodness.
one. That's hard. I know it's hard because we grow a lot of things. When
Hmm.
gardeners, we grow everything. We try everything.
Yeah,
What would be
it's
like the
true.
one? Like it doesn't have to be specific variety. You can just say like maybe tomatoes or zucchini, but like if you want to go, would it be a flower? Would it be a tomato? Would it be what would it be?
Oh goodness. So flowers, oh, there's too many in number for me to be like, oh, I love all this different stuff, but I don't know. I love hydrangeas. They're like beautiful for flowers. Like
Mm-hmm.
that would be my oh, like specific one. But for veggies, oh goodness, I think I like the not necessarily the tasting or the eating of it, but I love the rewards of potatoes because I think it's so cool that you can bury this potato and you don't know what's happening. And it's like such a surprise to me when I'm digging through and I'm like, oh my goodness, like look at these potatoes. So I think potatoes would be my favorite thing to grow because they're so low maintenance, they're so easy to me. Um, and there's so much reward in it because you're just putting in this
Right.
little, this little eye, and then you're coming out with like 15 potatoes, which is so fun.
Mm-hmm. It's like a treasure hunt
After that, I
too.
think it's,
When it
yeah,
comes to
like
root
onions.
vegetables, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Root vegetables is a huge reward because you don't, I mean, carrots, like you just put in these little
Oh my
seeds and
gosh.
then boom,
Mm-hmm. I left my
60 days
carrots out.
later.
I forgot about my carrots. Oh my gosh. When I pulled those things out, I pulled a carrot the size of my head. It was so big. And I was
Oh
like,
my
I was
goodness.
stoked. I was stoked. It's the coolest thing. Root vegetables are so much fun to grow.
Hmm. I mean, right now I've got like 18 inches of snow on the ground, and I still have carrots in the ground, but they're covered with
Mm-hmm.
harvest guard. So I could literally go out there if I wanted to and harvest carrots right now because they're a root vegetable. They'll be fine, which is so cool. Um, so yeah, I love growing potatoes. So.
Potatoes are nice. I do mine in buckets just because
Hmm.
I don't want to accidentally leave one in my raised bed and be like,
Yeah,
I did not plant you there. But like, I
yeah.
really don't care about that sort of thing. But it's easier for buckets, and it also just keeps everything in one area, and I can move them depending on sun and rain
Hmm.
and things like that.
Oh yeah, that definitely is easier. Like, I don't have like when I say raised beds, it doesn't have to be like what everybody thinks of raised beds, they're wood. I have some of those, but I actually have a lot of stock tanks that I use for raised beds, and that's super nice because it's such a deep depth. So I can
Yeah,
have things that kind of go down farther if I on like corn or stuff like that. They have a deeper root system. So I can use that. And that's so nice because since I live and married to a farmer, like there's a lot of cattle tanks that have holes in them. And that's the pristine thing that I use. And like we have wood cattle
mhm,
tanks, which are super cool. And that's actually what I grow my potatoes in. And I love using that. And something that I have set up throughout my entire garden is a drip irrigation system. So I don't have like the underground drip that you would, hook up to and stuff like that. I actually hook it up to my faucet outside, and I run all of my watering off of that. So I have consistent watering for my raised beds. I mean, my raised beds are, I don't know, 100 feet, 200 feet from where the spigot is. And I buried the line myself. Like, it's not hard to do. It takes time and it's a little bit of money, but in the end, I find that my produce is equally in same size when they get that equal distribution of water. So
right.
that's
Hmm.
nice. It's a little bit of work in the beginning, but it's so worth it. Like if I'm gone for a week, my husband doesn't have to worry about watering. I can turn it on from my phone with the hose timer that I have, and
Hmm.
that's so
That's
nice. And
awesome.
if it's gonna rain, I'm like I shut it off from my phone. You don't have to do that, but it's easier on me than I don't have to worry about it. Because in Nebraska, we hardly like don't get rain that often, and so you have to have another source for water. I can't just rely on the weather because otherwise everything would be dry and shriveled.
Mother
Right.
So,
Nature doesn't
I
care.
tried that this year to where I was like 2 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm going to diligently water these. I'm going to water 2 or 3 times a week just to make sure they're getting everything.
hmm
Everything did really well. Last year, I fell into a sort of summer depression, but it was also kind of an experiment in the same sense where it was like, just don't water and see what happens. Like, water a little bit when they're young, but just kind of
hmm
let the rain do the rest and they should be fine. No, corn did nothing. I got like
hmm
3 very tiny ears of corn and it just wasn't worth it. The tomatoes did amazing. Nothing else really did that well.
hmm
Another reason I got into kiddie pool gardens, actually, like the big 5 foot across ones.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I want to try potatoes in that so bad because they're still contained, but there's so much more room for them to really spread out than just a five
hmm
gallon bucket.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be that's the nice thing about having them kind of contained is because I always feel like I can never find all of my potatoes.
Right.
Like growing up, we used to do it in ground, which is something you can totally do with you got your potato fork, stuff like that. But then the next year we come back and there's like random potatoes growing, and I'm like, oh, we missed a big, huge cluster. So having a potato plant contained is so, so nice because
Yeah.
they're all going to be inside of that. You're in that location. You're not going to lose any, hopefully.
I do what I do with my 5 gallon buckets is I do potatoes in the spring and then I'll separate them, like do half in
hmm
earlier spring or early summer harvesting and then a later batch. And then I'll do a big shot of flowers at the end of the year with them because my raised beds are still doing their summer produce.
hmm
And I just love it. But I've had like random potatoes shoot up and I'm like, I could have sworn I dug everything out of that.
Yeah.
And then there's a potato and I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna be getting some little surprises with this, and that's fine.
Yeah. I think that's something too with gardening is that it's never going to be perfect. It's never like it's not always going to be, equally down the road, like each spacing out. And that's so fun. Like sometimes I'll have like a random sunflower that will pop through like one of my beds and I'm like, I'll just leave it. Like it's doing its thing. It's living
Hmm.
its life. So I'll just leave it. Like it's just part of it. Does gardening doesn't have to be perfect straight rows.
If it was
But
perfect, it'd be a little boring.
yeah,
Like,
it's true. It's true. It's like, what's fun about it? Like, but yeah.
The wild and untamed is just as beautiful. I mean, maybe your brain works that way where you see that organized and it's like yeah, that's nice to me.
hmm
But to everybody, their gardens are gonna look different. Mine was organized, but then as it grew, it got more and more untamed. And it just made like
hmm
this lush area. And it was just like to go and walk through it. I was just like, now granted, the vines I couldn't really get through the row, but I was like, look at you doing your thing. Just you keep going. Like it's just
Yeah.
like it's so beautiful. It's nature
Hmm.
being nature, doing its thing and watching it grow. It's incredible. The whole aspect of gardening, farming, I mean, the lifestyle is just it's amazing. And I think that
Hmm.
and that could lead to our one of our last topics. What would you say is your favorite thing about this lifestyle?
Oh boy. The thing that really just when you asked me that question, the first thing that popped into my head is the freedom that
Mhm.
comes with it. Um, I am blessed that I don't necessarily have to have a job. Um, that I get to be, stay at home. But I mean, I work at a greenhouse in the spring, so there is that. But I like that I'm not tied down to any specific thing. I mean, there is a lot of work that comes into being a farmer, to having a garden, to different stuff like that, to having livestock. You can't just up and leave for a week. Every things won't survive for a week unless you have, automatic waters and all different stuff like that. But there is such a freedom in that, I don't have to have be here at that specific time from 9 to 5, and stuff like that. There's just so much freedom, and there's so much great rewards. I think is a big thing, from your work. It's a lot of hard work, but the rewards are just there's just it's
They're
abundant.
exponential. They just,
Yeah,
yeah, they
yeah,
just outweigh
yeah.
everything you have to put in. And a lot of things, once you get going, they are not minimal effort, but not a lot of effort, but you still get a great reward from things. It's
Hmm.
just that initial setup of everything and learning. But then once that, it's really quite simple.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And um, it's not always going to be perfect, um, and not going to be how you planned. But as long as you're willing to evolve with your process and allow, things to just kind of take its course, that's all right. Don't You can't really stress about it. You can't control the weather. You can't control what's happening around you with other people and different stuff like that. But um, that's okay. You can control what's going on very minimally. But yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things, and I really love the animals of being, where I'm at. I love taking care of animals. Like that's my jam. I love it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's beautiful. We like to end the videos. We like to ask all of the people we interview these questions like what is your favorite thing about the lifestyle? Because we really like to see everybody's perspective of it. And so
Hmm.
far it's all been different. It's all been different. And it's so beautiful because it's like each one of us, we're all gardening, we're all growing different things on different levels, and we
Hmm.
all have our own perspectives of it. And agriculture is that. There's so many, like I talked about earlier, there's so many paths, there's so many roads, there's so many doors you can go through, so many things you can learn. And I really like to see everybody's perspective of it and to just hear from your point of view just what your favorite thing about it is. And I mean, I have my favorite thing, Zach has his favorite thing, everybody
Yeah.
has their favorite thing about it, and it's all united as one thing, and it's agriculture. It's agriculture, and
Hmm.
it all comes to that. It's absolutely beautiful farming, being able to just take care of nature. That's like our
Hmm.
job. We're taking care of nature. Like that's so cool. That's so cool. It's a beautiful it's a beautiful thing. Agriculture is beautiful, and I really liked your perspective of it and your point of view. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for having me.
And where
So,
can we
yeah,
find you? Like your social media, anything? Just
Oh
plug
yeah,
it here.
you can find me on Instagram. That's really all I'm at. Gardening the farm. That's me right there on Instagram.
we'll have it linked in the description for you guys. But I think that's everything for today's episode. We really enjoyed having you on. Thank you so much for being here, for taking time out of your day for us.
Yes,
Um,
thank you.
Oh
and
yeah, it was fun.
yeah, super fun, super cool. I hope this video helps you guys out. If you guys have any questions or concerns, maybe questions for her, link in the description. Hit her up on Instagram or in the comments. Ask us. We're here to help. We're growing. We want to help you guys grow. We're here to educate and inspire, and we hope that this video did that for you.